Commencing countdown.
3, 2, 1.
This is the Contracting Experience, connecting government contracting professionals to the world around them through conversations with acquisition influencers, insights into evolving hot topics, and sharing lessons learned from the field.
This episode features AFMC CDX Director Ms. Kimberly Norman and Procurement Analyst Ms. Barbaralee Mariano Kelleher discussing the Air Force Materiel Command CDX office and how it is accelerating the AFMC Commander's initiatives. They inform us on what CDX's mission is and progress that has been made through the AFMC We Need initiative. In addition, the ladies share how the AFMC workforce can engage with CDX to get additional resources and help solve problems out in the field. I also want to take this opportunity to say a big thank you to our audio-visual production specialist extraordinaire out in the 88th Air Base Wing Public Affairs, Mr. Matthew Klaus. Matt has recorded and edited the Contracting Experience podcast since the start. Although he was a little skeptical about a contracting podcast at the beginning, and I can't say I blame him, he has been my partner in crime in keeping this podcast going for over 3 years and over 60,000 downloads. He even started proudly wearing a Contracting Experience podcast pin for recordings. Unfortunately for us, he is moving on to a new job in the new year. But I just want to say thank you, Matt, for all your hard work and great support to the podcast. It has truly been a pleasure to work with you and get to know you. All right, welcome Ms. Norman and Barbaralee to the podcast.
Thanks.
So Ms. Norman, what is the CDX office and what is its mission?
The CDX office is the Commander's Accelerated Initiatives Office. And to kind of explain our mission, I'd like to kind of take you back and give you a little bit of history about how we were created and why we were created, and then you'll probably better understand the mission that we currently have. So if we go back to the 2018 National Defense Strategy, that strategy really called on us to think differently. And it establishes the intent to pursue urgent change at significant scale. And they said, we're really coming out of a period of strategic atrophy where we are aware that our competitive military advantage has been eroding. And so, they said we really need to look at change and transformation of how the department conducts business. Looking at that, AFMC decided that we really needed to look at whether or not our command was structured and organized and had the right culture to support the National Defense Strategy. And things like, did our culture support innovation and warfighting agility? Were we reactive or were we anticipating the Air Force needs? And in order to answer some of those questions, General Bunch launched the AFMC We Need initiative, which was a grassroots effort to go out and talk to airmen at every level. So the team in 2019 went out and spoke with, we surveyed every single airman in the command. We also surveyed leaders within the command. We sat down and had interviews with Air Force leaders, every MAJCOM commander, the Chief of Staff, the Secretary of the Air Force, and our own center commanders. We also went back and we looked at what AFMC was telling us over the last several years through DOCSs and through A2G focus groups and a number of other methods for airmen to talk to us and tell us about what they needed to do their jobs and identify gaps and problems. And so out of that effort, we received 90,000 comments, and it gave us just a ton of information about what our airmen needed from us. And so from that, we identified focus areas that we needed to go after. And when that initiative was outbriefed, the result of that was a temporary stand-up of CDX. We worked for General Schaefer, the deputy commander at the time. There were 7 positions that were given to kind of go after all of these things that were identified, and just relentlessly, get after change. How do we change some of the things that were identified? And it was a 1-year temporary office. And as we came up to the end of that year, first of all, there's still so much that needs to be done. But we were really making a lot of headway, and through the corporate structure, the suggestion was proposed to keep CDX as an enduring office. And that's what happened. General Bunch and the AFMC Council approved the stand-up of the Commander's Accelerated Initiatives Office as a permanent organization. Still reports to the Deputy Commander. And we currently have, it's a 13-person office, and we have 3 cells. The first cell is our Mission Enhancement Cell. And that's kind of the front door into our organization. They manage the workflow, but they do a lot of kind of grassroots, talking to airmen through a number of different means. They also have POCs in at every center, every wing, and every headquarter directorate, and so they're getting feedback that way. And they're continuing to work what we kind of consider those AFMC We Need type initiatives. The second cell that we stood up was the Continuous Improvement Cell, or Continuous Improvement and Innovation Cell, actually. And that came from the 589 Directorate. There was an organization within 589 that did CPI, and we pulled them out and they merged with CDX. And so we have all of our continuous improvement professionals in CDX now. So we have 2 black belts and 2 green belts, and our MAGCOM, Master Process Officer, is in our office, and they do continuous improvement events and help organizations throughout the command and in the Air Force, actually. And then the third cell that we stood up, we originally called the AFWorks Integration Cell, and that was because the Vice Chief of Staff had asked all of the MAGCOMs to identify POCs to work with AFWorks to accelerate innovations. But after we stood that cell up, we've kind of rebranded it a little bit, and because we've realized that the role that CDX has is much greater than just that relationship with AFWorks. We really are doing we're kind of the belly button for integrating innovation efforts across the command and with other MAGCOMs and other Department of Defense entities as well. We've kind of rebranded that cell to be the AFMC Innovation Integration Cell. So that is kind of our organizational structure. Our mission is really to improve, innovate, and integrate. So we try and ignite a culture of continuous transformation and spark an ecosystem of disruptive change and be that conduit for connections and synergies across the command, with the goal that we are empowering and equipping airmen to drive to be the AFMC we need, the AFMC that the Air Force needs us to be. And all of those things kind of fall under that umbrella.
Great. Can you provide insight into some of the progress that has been made through the AFMC We Need initiative?
There has been, just hundreds and hundreds of initiatives that came out as a result of this. So every directorate was given, feedback on comments that came out of the AFMC We Need initiative, and they've pursued things, that might have been relevant to their functional areas. But then we've also taken a look at enterprise-wide, some of the things that we needed to do. Just very simply, one of the things that we learned was that our airmen didn't fully understand the mission of AFMC. We're a very different command. Our makeup is very different, with a very large civilian population. Our centers are not, other MAGCOMs don't have centers like we do. And so people didn't understand even where they fell in that organization, and how each one of those missions of the centers related to one another. And so PA developed a communication plan that they've really been pushing hard to try and communicate who we are as AFMC and who we are as airmen in our different career fields within the command to try and connect one another. There were efforts to connect organizations to an operational unit where, say for instance, an engineer might be working on something and never saw the product after that they had been working on for years and years, and they never connected with the operational unit that was utilizing something that they had created. And so there have been efforts to connect program offices maybe with other units and other MAGCOMs to do that. General Bunch set aside $20 million the first year to support these initiatives, and that money went to improving our network. It went to buying more laptops than we normally would be able to buy, in a fiscal year, to help our airmen who were having problems, connecting because of the system that they were using was just not, up to par. So we bought a lot of laptops, we improved networks, we put money into facilities. We learned that there were a lot of our airmen working in some pretty suboptimal working conditions. And, it's been hard, fiscally to try and support our infrastructure and pour money into, to keep all of our buildings maintained. And some things just didn't reach that priority level to where they could be maintained. And so some of those places were identified to us, and we were able to put money towards that to fix things, help with dorm improvements. We've supported the development of the command-wide transition to TMT from soccer. That was something that we heard a lot about, that the command wanted us to switch to TMT, and so we helped support that. And we launched our first Spark Tank competition, and so this year we've had, we did our second annual Spark Tank competition, and we're able to forward some of those ideas to the Air Force level Spark Tank competition. But in the meantime, some of those ideas that might not have been selected to go on are still getting funded. These innovators are able to put their ideas out there in front of our command leadership, and they're getting support for some of their ideas. One of those was Blood Rain from last year's Spark Tank, where they were, they had the idea of, being able to drop blood into an austere location, where, there were, people injured, to be able to get to, as a life-saving initiative. And they're testing that. And gosh, there are so many different things. Professional Development Conference, Agile Patriot was a result of the AFMC We Need initiative. And all of these things were a result of airmen speaking up and saying, hey, we would really, like some more development opportunities, or, whatnot. There's so many, and we try and advertise these through, we have an AFMC We Need team site that anybody can join if they want to follow updates on what's going on. We do a monthly activity report that gets sent to the senior leadership and hopefully is getting pushed out, but we also do a newsletter that goes out quarterly that General Schaefer sends out command-wide, so that goes to every airman. And then again, we have the POCs that people can reach out to. So we're trying to push out information, work a lot with public affairs to try and get social media posts and articles written on some of the things that are happening around the command. But they're happening at every level. They're happening at the flight and squadron level, and the wing level, and the center level, and then here in the headquarters, in functional communities, and then they're also happening command-wide, So There's been a tremendous amount of work that's been done. There's still a lot to do, but we're always also learning. And we continue to listen to our airmen and find out how we can help them. And when I say airmen, I mean at every level. I mean, we're doing things to try and help commanders. We're doing things to try and help our youngest airmen in the dorms. So,
great. Well, thank you. Barbaralee, why is it important to bring contracting expertise to CDX?
Well, I think in the past, few years especially, I think how PK is viewed has changed. Instead of just being that traditional contracting officer buyer role into really that idea of the mission-focused business leader and serving not just as the contracting officer, but really as that business analyst, and that I think has become more of our role in how we're seen. Even within IPTs, we are supposed to bring the business knowledge. So not just contracting knowledge, but that basic knowledge of finance and legality, all the things that we put all those kind of pieces together. So I think that was key, is having that perspective of having that business advisor. So although our team is a very diverse team, I mean, within our cell, we have a program manager, an engineer, and myself. And then within the rest of the organization, as Ms. Norman mentioned, we have CPI personnel, we have HR. So I think that diverse team and having all of those different perspectives is really key to having a full perspective of how everything needs to integrate and operate together. Specifically in our cell, the innovation integration cell, we say that we're trying to drive a culture of innovation by working hand in hand with innovators to link them to resources, to give them a conduit to leadership to help accelerate their ideas and implement ideas across the enterprise. So having that ability to know what are the tools available as well as the limitations, I think is key to innovation, and also bringing that whole idea of speed with discipline. Our innovators and engineers, they want to move fast, our program managers want to move fast, and everybody wants to go fast. But you have to sometimes take a step back and know what are the parameters that are stopping you, or what are the roadblocks and what things need to be removed. So I think that having that ability to have a business advisor to bring that perspective of the discipline with the speed, I think is critical.
Right. Well, and I like the point that you made about the business advisor, and I know Air Force Contracting General Holt is pushing the mission-focused business leader, which made me think of what you were talking about with the engineer and connecting them on the operational side of like having our contracting folks, our acquisition folks in general, just really understanding what they're buying and why it matters to the mission, which then we can be better business advisors, right, if we understand those things, right. Which is great. And when you talked about like, because people can come up with these ideas, but then it's like, okay, how do we connect getting our leadership, influencing them so that they think it's a good idea, and then where do we go next? And it sounds like that's what you guys are a good resource to even just talk through, like you said, what are the roadblocks and what are things that you're not thinking about that maybe you should be thinking about.
So hopefully you can look at us as, how can I connect you to other resources that may be able to help me? Or I have this program manager or this airman who's come to me with an idea and I'm not sure what to do. I don't have leadership support within my organization, and we're supposed to be there to provide that support, to help link those resources, to provide advice to anyone. I mean, really anyone can reach out to our organization for help. It doesn't matter. And I'd love to see more PK people reaching out, because we see innovation a lot of times within the technology, right, or improvement. But there's improvement within PK that could be touched upon by changing policy. And so any of those ideas could be brought forward for consideration.
Okay, great. Barbaralee, can you talk a little bit about what areas of the AFMC We Need initiative affect contracting, and how are those being addressed?
So for AFMC We Need, Ms. Norman mentioned that they collected over 90,000 comments, and specifically within PK, through field surveys, focus groups, and leadership surveys, they actually collected about 3,600 comments that were targeted towards PK. And so our senior leadership within AFMC PK reviewed every single one of those 3,600 comments and kind of categorized them in certain areas of concern. So some of them were resources, culture, morale, IT network, retention, retention. After taking that, and taking all of those comments together, AFMC PK went out and started doing road shows at various locations with the goal of, one, communicating who is AFMC, because across the board, with all functionals, they were hearing that people don't understand what AFMC is and what their role in AFMC was. So that was a big key to the roadshow, was communicating that to the PK community, sharing the information obtained from the surveys, and offering speed mentoring from Ms. Bullock. Additionally, PK had a huge focus on retention. I know that's always been a big thing for us in recent years, is PK is having some retention issues. I think that's cross-functional, but I mean, that's been a big focus for PK leadership, of understanding why we're not retaining talent. So they were a big push to get going the AFMC exit survey that's being worked with A1. And so I know that's getting really close in the final stages, is to have that exit survey so that leadership can really target what is causing our PK personnel to leave the command, so that they can do more targeted initiatives to try to combat that. Additionally, they had planned to do additional focus groups on retention and training, and ensuring that they were targeting training at the needs of the workforce. They tried to do some of those virtually with COVID, but found that they didn't get as good of a response without having the in-person focus groups. So some of those have kind of been put on hold due to the restraints of COVID, but I think the plan is to resume, and I know that at the AQC level, those same type of training focused and retention issues are being looked at and addressed, and obviously our leadership will be looking at what comes down from there too.
Okay, great. So Ms. Norman, you talked a little bit about this already, but how can the AFMC workforce engage with CDX, and what resources are available?
So there are many, many ways. We have an AFMC We Need workflow, so people can always send emails to us directly to the workflow. We have a new CDX SharePoint site that was just launched this week, and so that went out in the monthly activity report. I believe it's the monthly activity report that just went out this week. And I'm sure we'll probably make that a focus of our next quarterly newsletter as well, so that link will be out there.
Okay.
In addition to that, we've created an innovation hub, and that is on Teams.
Yes.
And anybody who's interested in connecting there that can get into Teams can access that. And as part of that innovation hub, really trying to connect people with all of the other innovation organizations throughout the command, tell a little bit about what they're each doing, and you'll be able to link to that from our SharePoint site as well. There are the AFMC We Need POCs.
It's Joe Fountain and Janetta Moore, I believe, are brandly the new POCs. I think Joe Fountain's only been in that role for about a month.
Yeah, so reaching out to them would be probably the best step, and to talk with them, and then to connect with Ashley Morgan in our office and the Mission Enhancement Cell. But really anybody in our office is willing to talk to them. And I know that Ashley is having routine meetings with all of those POCs, and then we're also doing the innovation working groups. And so either the AFMC We Need POCs or an innovation POC in an organization is connected to that, and those meetings I think are happening monthly or quarterly.
They're happening monthly.
And so there are all of those ways, and they can always reach out directly to me if they want to.
Awesome. Well, thank you both for being on the podcast and sharing more about CDX with our workforce.
Great. Thanks for having us.
If you have suggestions for topics or people to interview or feedback on the podcast, you can submit those at thecontractingexperience@gmail.com. I want to thank you all for listening to the Contracting Experience podcast. Until next time, keep connecting to the world around you.